Welcome, folks. Once again, I'm your host, Devahntaucolonel, with the Inspired Challenge podcast. First of all, I want to say thank you for joining on another episode where we're going to bring in another man that we're going to be able to talk about, hear some of his story, what he's got going on in life, and just kind of dig into some of his deeper thoughts on things. So at this time, let me introduce to you a man that dances like a butterfly and stings like a bee. A man that is a gentle giant, but at the same time, a ferocious dance warrior. A man that has the ability to raise the roof and shake the grounds. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to give you Mr. Kendrick.
You know, every time I talk to you, I feel like the most important person in the room. That's funny.
And every time I'm in a room with you, Kendrick, you are the most important person in the room, you know?
I appreciate that. You boost my confidence.
Absolutely, man. So, a quick little background story on how Kendrick and I met. I used to go to a hip-hop dance class Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Kendrick would teach hip-hop twice a week at this place. And just over the course of months, Kendrick always led a fun class, and it was super easy to meet different people, make friends, laugh at ourselves, and then, but also very encouraging in that just because you might have sucked at it, everybody else is like, don't worry, you'll get it. You know, your body will learn how to memorize things better. And just after time, it started to be true. Never improved the quality of how I did it, but it definitely improved my memorization. But yeah, so Kendrick, like, what's the story on you? Like, let the people know, like, your age, what you do, like what busy's your life.
Okay. So I am 31 years old, born and raised here in Orlando, Florida. Like you said, we met through dance. So I taught dance for about 10 years up until most recent, what was that, last year, September?
Yeah.
I stopped. I've done a couple pop-up things since then, but I kind of closed that chapter. But outside of dance, I have a corporate career. I work in education, finance. So I do a lot of things, actually.
Yeah.
I'm a busybody. I can't stick to one thing. I can't sit down for too long. So.
Heck yeah. And some of those things that Kendrick does, that's going to be definitely what we dive into here. Now, before we get into that, Kendrick, I want you to paint us a little bit of story, a picture of like what your life looked like as you were growing up, and how did you form your interest, and take us from like your earliest memory of things to when you first interacted with some things, pivotal moments, anything like that.
So let's preface this with, I have the worst memory. So I don't have like a ton of like childhood memories, I feel like, just because I can't remember things. But
there you go.
I told you the projecting thing. I mean, I had a great childhood, just normal, regular childhood. Happy, family involved, big family. We spend a lot of time together. Like I said, I've always been interested in a lot of things, like specifically the arts. So as a kid, I would draw, I would paint, always coloring, something like that. So that has been an interest in some form throughout my entire life.
Yeah.
I've always been interested in food, cooking. So in another universe, I probably would have been a chef.
Man. And you guys, let me tell you, y'all follow this man Kendrick every now and then. He'll post a little something of food, and I just sit there and I'm like,
I get a ton of messages about the food. I need to get back to doing that every now and then. But yes, arts, cooking, those were probably my main two things. I was always either in the kitchen or doing something artistic. Funny enough, dance is the last thing that came into the picture. Yeah, I didn't go to a dance class until I was 18.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's ironic that ended up becoming a big piece of my journey. But yeah, childhood just kind of included all of those things. I was never one to just stick to one thing. If I wanted to do something, I did. Or if I didn't, then that was fine too. I wasn't, afraid to explore something. So that probably led me to, where I'm at now. I'd say as I got into middle and high school, I definitely continued. I took a lot of art classes, whether it was a general art class where I explored different styles and the history of art, to ceramics that I did for a couple of years. Yep, pottery and on the wheel. I did that for a couple of years in high school. So that's kind of been a consistent thing in my life in some form.
When it came to the pottery, like, what was like your piece that you were ever the most proud of?
Ooh, let's see. Okay, so there's probably a couple. One, so on the wheel, where, have your hands, you're actually holding the clay. Probably just the first time doing that. And if you've ever done it, it's very hard to not let that collapse. But so just whatever, I don't remember what it was, but I remember the feeling of just being able to actually get a final product out of that, because it's hard. But then for my senior ceramics class, we had to create like a collection. So I had to come up with, I think it was like 3 to 5 pieces that we had to submit for our project. And that was probably one that I was really proud of, because one, it was 3 to 5 pieces. So it took time. It took a lot of time to, create all of those pieces from start to finish. And they came out looking really great. And I actually still have a couple of those in my bookcase, including, I think there's like a 15-inch tall vase that I made. I mean, it's nothing spectacular, but for the time, it was pretty good. So I'd say those were probably my most proud.
Awesome. And then, so you were coming up, you're always trying out these different things. And so you said that it wasn't until you were 18 that you kind of like got introduced into the dance world. And then is that what you started doing completely just going forward? Or like, where does your kind of your entrepreneurial spirit come in that?
No, I didn't actually. I didn't know what my dance journey was going to look like. Growing up, I went from wanting to be a teacher to a psychologist to a chef, probably back to a teacher, and it just kept bouncing. So I think that when I mentioned not like wanting to be afraid to just jump to something or do something or explore it, that's probably where that came from. When it came to, I think I was out of high school and a friend wanted me to go to a dance class with them. And so I said, okay, why not? I always had a love for art. I had always had a love for dance, even though I hadn't done it. So I said, sure. They ended up not being able to make it. They bailed on me last minute. And I decided to go anyway. And it was very nerve-wracking. But it's all, the hardest part is stepping foot into the room. I always tell my students that. Once you do that, it's usually not that bad. So I decided to go anyway. I loved it. And I ended up following that teacher to Spotlight, which is where I worked and where we met. And she had classes there. So I took that class and I loved it. And then I came back and she wasn't there that week, or the schedule was changing. I went like, it might have been like in summer and the schedule was changing. And so they're like, well, take this class with this teacher. I promise you'll love it. You'll be great. So I did. And that kind of started my journey of dancing. And at that point, it was just for fun. It was just a hobby. It's something I wanted to do. And I kept taking classes. And eventually, I think that second teacher was sick or something, and they weren't there that day. So there wasn't class. And Peter, the studio owner, the infamous
shout out
Peter
to Peter,
Anthony,
oh man,
who I love, he said, well, why don't you jump into this lyrical class? And I'm like, Peter, this is a hip hop class. And I just started doing this. What am I going to do in this lyrical class? I don't even know what that is.
Right.
So I did it anyway. He's a very convincing man. And I ended up having a blast, stepped outside of my comfort zone. And so then I started started the process of me taking other styles of classes.
Okay.
And then I just kept going from there and getting better at it, which takes a lot of time. We're talking some years of just taking classes recreationally. And at that point, you meet people, you become friends, and you have a community, as you described, which is what I always hope for my class. And it was very recreational. And later down the line, I ended up getting to the point where I wanted to teach. But so there was a long time in between there.
Fair enough. Had to put the years in and kind of build up the stride and the confidence in there. Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't a goal. It wasn't an intention that I set to go on this path. Honestly, the only reason that I ended up teaching was because of tragedy. So a friend of mine, my best friend, he passed away, I want to say in 2014. And so and he was a teacher there, and he was a very important person in my life, class that I took, who I learned from. And I think throughout that process and throughout the grieving process, I kind of was pulled back into that comfort, into that home dance, into the studio, which is often a second home for us. So that event is what kind of prompted this trajectory of my dance world. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't intentional. I didn't know. To be honest, I was sitting in the office at Spotlight, much like we're sitting here and across from Peter Anthony. And one day, randomly, no thought before this, no prior conversation, I said, hey, and he looked at me and I said, I think I want to teach.
Oh.
And that's exactly how he looked at me, minus the word. He just kind of looked at me and he shook his head. And then after a few seconds went by, he said, okay. And that's all I remember from that conversation.
I love that.
Because it was very random. It was truly, truly random, like I said. And then eventually we circled back to that conversation. And it started with, okay, well, if you're going to teach, then you need to assist. And so he put me in a class with Carla, another one of my teachers and friends. And he said, okay, you're going to have to assist Carla. So I had to learn her warm up, and I had to be in front and assist and do it a million times. And, if she wasn't there, that type of thing. And so after that, then he said, well, now you have to assist me. So
man.
Here we go again. In with Peter Anthony and assisting him. So it was a process. And it makes sense because, like I said, it was random. I didn't grow up dancing.
Yeah.
Yes, he's seen me, here in the studio and taking classes and, various styles, but I didn't necessarily have the background that someone would normally have, to do this. And so after that, then the opportunity came up for me to sub a class when someone wasn't going to be there. And of course, I said yes, and it went well. And so then I subbed again. I want to say this is all that same year, 2014. So now we're probably like October, November. And then after those two classes that I subbed, Miss Margaret came to me and she said, how about we give you a class when we come back from break in January?
Man.
And so that was my first class, my name on the lineup. And it went well. And then from there, it was, hey, let's let's give you another slot. You know, we usually had that Tuesday, Thursday slot. And since it just kept going from there. So I got a Tuesday, then I got a Thursday, and then I got a Saturday, and then I got a Monday. And next thing you know, I'm teaching 4 or 5 days a week. And it just kind of progressed from there. But I also put in the work. I considered it, one, it was a connection to my friend. And so I cherished that and I honored that. And if I'm going to show up and do something, I want to really show up and do it. And I also felt like I had something to prove because I wasn't the typical dancer.
Right.
I didn't have the background. I didn't work at Disney or Universal and in the theme park world. So, and there are all of these people who are amazing,
Right.
and they do. So I felt like I had something to prove.
Yeah.
And I, even year 9 and 10, I always still carry a little bit of that. I have something to prove. But it worked, and I was consistent. And whether it was one person showing up, 2 people showing up, I taught the class the same way. I poured into that class and into them. I always considered it an honor for any person to show up and pay their money to take class with me. That's always been my perspective. And I think that carried over and that paid off and allowed me to do the things that I was meant to do. And so although it started off because of a sad occurrence or a sad event, you know, it blossomed into this great thing that I believe was destined to be and allowed me to do a lot of amazing things and meet a lot of great people.
And that's where like I said, towards that latter half in there, I came in there and everybody's doing all these wild moves and it's just like, oh snap. And I still remember people trying to like shove me up to the front and I'm like, no, don't do it. We don't have to do this, guys.
I know to be honest, I stand in the back of any class, even now. That's my comfort zone. I want that back left corner. Don't bother me. I don't generally talk in class, which is funny because, you know, my class, I try to make it a very warm, open environment. It's very open, no judgment. That's just what I try to put out there. I want people to be comfortable, whether you have never stepped foot in dance class before or whether you have taken class for years. You know, I want it to be comfortable for everyone. But if I'm taking a class, I'm very quiet. I'm not talking. I'm focused. I'm paying attention. That's just my vibe.
Oh man. So, and that details things as far as like your dance experience goes, which is, it's cool how like you said, like you put in the work for it. It's not like it was something that just all happened all at once. You didn't have this huge background. It was just like you went for comfort and then it evolved over time. The more that you were willing to feed it. So I know that you have other things that you do. And things from, I don't even know like what the scope of it really covers. And you have your regular job too.
I do.
So like,
even throughout that time, I've always done multiple things. So going back to even like just high school and starting to work, I started working at 16. I got the administrative assistant job at my church, and I would volunteer or do projects with like the YMCA, but instead of, I don't know, whatever, I wanted to do this super involved project that took up time. I always went for things where I felt like there was impact or purpose. And so along the way, I've always done that. Right out of high school, I was in a program called AVID during high school. In middle and high school, actually. Yeah, you're familiar?
Absolutely, man. Those AVID kids are smart as heck and always so stressed.
They were focused. I was in that program from middle school through high school, and one of my high school teachers wanted me to come back and then volunteer. So right out of high school, I volunteered to go back and do tutorials and help assist in those classes. And that led to me getting a job doing that, to be paid doing that at the school. So that was like my first introduction to working in the school system.
Wow.
Was that. And it started from that volunteer opportunity. Around that time, I also worked, part-time for the YMCA during after-school programs. So very early on, I kind of started my career, whether it was administratively or with children and in education.
Yeah.
So that went from after-school program to then tutoring.
Which, real quick, I think that's super cool how you, even as a kid, younger in age and whatnot, you were going forward, like doing something, putting in the work first, and then that led to a job, and that kind of, it completely reflects in your adulthood. Just that, like, go forward, be all in, like, give it your all, and then people see it and they give you an opportunity with something else.
Absolutely. I think everything that I've ever done has always led to the next. I have an outline of what I want. It never truly turns out exactly like what you think it's going to turn out like, but there's always been some sort of outline, and one opportunity has led to the next. So it's starting from me deciding that I want my career to look somewhat like this, or I know I want to go this route. Yeah. So I was very intentional in saying that I didn't want like a fast food job, or at the time everyone was going to the theme park. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those jobs. Yeah. I just knew that I wanted something specific, so I wanted to start in a different place, different path, that's all. And so I did that. Yeah. I knew somewhat education was that realm, and so after school program and then volunteering at the school. So it was very connected, even though I didn't know what the outcome would be. So I was intentional in that sense, and open to the things that were coming towards me. So I could have said, no, I don't want to volunteer at this school. I just left this school, or something like that. And it wouldn't have been the same journey. But I was open to it, and I wanted to give back. So that allowed me to explore certain, possibilities or opportunities. So going from the after school program to the tutoring, and then, like I said, that led to like a short term, like 6 months job tutoring at a middle school. And then that led to me being able to go and actually work like full time at the middle school tutoring, and helping with the AVID program and other classes. That segued to me saying, I really enjoy doing this. I really enjoy being able to help students, in this way. I want to do that a little bit more. So that carried over to me starting my tutoring business, at that time, while I was also, working in the school. So that was the very beginning of me kind of creating my own path.
And business. When you created it, do you mean like just like letting them know, handing out your phone number, flyers, or do you mean like LLCing and like all of that as well?
So as we explore this, I am very much like I'd say it's probably a natural gift, but I'm very much like I want to do things the right way. So at the time it wasn't LLC, but it was a DBA. Okay. So I knew, if I want to do this, I want to, one, establish a sense of credibility. Right. So I want this to be set up the right way. Obviously, I was not promoting, or, there was no conflict of interest as far as, students there, but I did set it up so that I could continue to further that outside of that. And then naturally I did get some, clients there. But yeah, I did set up and have a DBA. I did, decide to get a logo and a website and all of those things, and set up a pricing structure. And so even though that was like the very beginning, and it's evolved in how I've done that, I have always had that, sense to create that foundation, and how I want my business to be set up and structured, even in that small way.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that, like in the tutoring space, I think I know some schools are like don't take clients, but then some are very much like, oh yeah, if you want to take someone and tutor them outside, like that is your business to do as you please.
Yeah, you can. You can absolutely have clients. It's just, you make sure you know what the rules are for you. You can't have that conflict where it's like, oh, well, I'm going to help you with this and you're paying me for this and then you're getting this. It's like, so there's that, that line there that you don't want to cross. But yeah, absolutely. You can have clients and, and I promoted myself elsewhere to kind of grow that. And it worked. And so I kind of continued doing that along with my part-time and kind of gaining some clients that way. And it was successful a little bit, for the time and what it was. But eventually so I did do that for a while. Eventually I wanted to continue my career in the school system. So I ended up getting another job at a different school. And that was, working full time and involved. And I kind of kept my clients. But then I lost my job there. Because of budget cuts. So it was a situation where,
it's always the dang budget cuts.
First one in, or, last one in, first one out.
Yeah.
That type of situation. But they were so amazing. Still to this day, one of the best experiences I've had. So many amazing people. I had a great principal there who, sat me down and said, hey, this is what's happening. It's not something I really want to do, but it's something that we have to do. And they're very supportive in saying, hey, if you need any help, if you want to take a look and say, hey, I see this, I'm happy to letter of recommendation type deal. And it worked out, even though at the time I'm like, I love this job. I love the school. But it ended up being a promotion that moved me from, the school level to the district level. And, and it happened.
Holy smokes.
It took a while too. So it's like end of the school year, I'd probably find out like beginning of May. And I knew it was going to happen. So even before it happened, I'd already applied to other places. I pay attention to everything. And I just knew naturally that was what was going to happen next. So I had an interview I think 3 days later from the day that they told me. I didn't get it, but
you just like, oh, nice. That gives me time to change out my tires, get my oil checked.
And apply for some jobs just because I'm going to need a job. But none of those worked out. And it was almost 2 months. For one of the ones I was applying at different schools, getting nothing. I did some interviews, but they didn't pan out. And then I finally heard back from one that I applied for. I felt like a month and a half later. And it ended up being a job at the district level. Wow. And it was great. It was more money. It was, I think, more hours. At the time, like a full-time 40 versus a 30-something. And that was great. I think that led me to the career I have now, where I moved on and I still work in education, but in the e-learning space and finance. I've gone through a couple jobs there, but I think that experience or the ending of that chapter and being pushed into the next one led me to where I'm at now, and it kind of worked out.
Awesome. And what you're doing now, e-learning finance, is that like working with adults who are trying to figure stuff out, but different from like a financial plan? Like, what's the space of that look like?
Still public education, but virtual. For K-12. I kind of work in equivalent to still district level, just in the background. I've worked in like business operations, so we're still servicing K-12 students, and I'm still in that public education space.
Gotcha.
Just kind of now. Like I said, I've gone from like business operations to like finance, the background stuff that makes schools run.
Gotcha. Yeah. Hot dog, man. It's
a lot. I don't, like I said, I've always, what some, I learned this phrase, would call multi-passionate.
Right.
There's
Okay.
always all these things that you want to do or are interested in doing. And so I've kind of been able to do a lot of those things just by being open to, opportunities and experiences.
I like it. I like it, man. So then where does for you, for those of you watching this, you see that it's titled Kendrick of K Creative. Where does the K Creative come in? Did that start with the tutoring, or is that a whole different thing? Like, where does that come into play for you?
So let's see. Let's make sure I get this timeline right. So my tutoring company initially was KY Tutoring Services.
Okay.
After my name. And then when I got into...
What is your last name, by the way? White? I thought it was White. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought
so. That's where I got K White from.
Yeah.
And then when I got into the dance space, as I was teaching and it became a thing, and I'm like, okay, you're doing this now. I never wanted to become a professional dancer or head in that world. I just wanted to teach because I was always surrounded by amazing teachers, at Spotlight, from Peter, Carla, Lindsay, Wilson, all of those people, Debbie, that shaped my experience in being able to see what that looked like and what it felt like. I really loved that. I could sit in the studio and just in a chair and just watch people teach.
Yeah.
And so once I started doing that, I just kind of, like I said, I always want to set things up. If I'm going to do it, I might as well set it up the right way, no matter what's going to happen. I set up K Creatives to kind of brand, myself in that space.
Okay.
So whether it was teaching, I said, I want to be able to, book a job, or if I want to go teach here or at this conference or something, book privates. What's that going to look like? How's that going to work? So that's where K Creatives came from. It was my company to be able to brand myself in, in that space and in the things I was doing. But I also knew that that wasn't the only thing that I wanted to do or was going to do.
Right.
So I wanted to set it up in a way that I could add on things. K Creatives was that. My tutoring company, I stopped when I kind of went into the district because it was just my time. I didn't have it, so I kind of kept any current clients I had, and then I phased them out until they were done or they graduated, and I didn't take any more, so it stopped. But eventually, once I was in the dance space and it was established, I did end up bringing back my tutoring company. But I rebranded it under the K Creatives name. So I had K Creatives for my creative stuff and my dance stuff, but then I had K Creatives Tutoring Services.
Okay.
So cool. That's the company, DBA, K Creatives Tutoring Services. So I can still establish it as its own thing. It has its own website, but it's still within the brand. It's still under the, the wheelhouse. And so I had both of those going. So yeah, K Creatives, that came from that.
So for a lot of people, and you've mentioned that you like to do things kind of the safe, good way, right way, make sure that your dots are dotted and your T's are crossed and all that. Where did that spirit of just making sure things are in place and on the books correctly come from for you and doing things? I know some people, they would just tutor and they would do a little bit of tutoring and they would never go and look at building it and branding it and doing all these things. So where does that spirit come from for you? I
don't know where the origin of that truly is. I think it's just kind of a natural part of who I am. I'm just like I said, I've always had multiple interests and I've kind of explored those, but I didn't look at anything business wise as a kid or you
never watched videos or had a mentor that told you, hey, you need to be a DBA.
No, I truly haven't. Of course there's always been people to if I want to do something to help or offer opinions or guidance. But no, I didn't have any of that like background that helped me do this. I just knew there was just a natural instinct, that said, hey, if you're going to do this, it just needs to be done in the right fashion. It needs to be set up in the right way to the best of your abilities. So maybe just, me wanting to excel at something or be good at it or perfect or as close to perfect as we can be. I think that natural instinct is what I've always had when I went into something. And I'm also thinking end game. Even if, so let's say, for my tutoring company, I may just do this on a small level, but if it were to go here, what would that look like? So I think in anything I do, I ask myself that question, and then I backtrack to say, okay, well, how can that happen? Or what is it going to take or look like to get there? I don't have to be headed in that route, but I kind of keep that in mind. And even I'm very big on the foundation of things. So take the time now to set it up so that you help yourself in the future. If you're going to start, this hobby or this venture or this business in 3 months from now, you don't want to have to go back and redo everything that you did and then do it again in 6 months.
Absolutely.
Granted, there will be natural things that evolve and change, but set it up in a way that helps you. And if you do get a client in whatever you're doing, you're not having to scramble. And professional. I've just always been professional in anything that I do. So I'm going to try to, set that up. So I don't know where it comes from. I just always naturally have been that way with anything that I do.
That's good, man. That's good. I mean, shoot, I'm glad that you have like that, just that ability to kind of know it and then research the tools out and whatnot. And you like, because I know I've done a few things where I've been like, oh yeah, I think I want to sell this thing right here and I'll do it. And then and this is totally like on a smaller scale, but I used to like sell candy in school and stuff. And I got pretty popular. I had like a solid client base. At school, I would make anywhere from like $40 to $60 a day.
That's pretty good.
It was all right. I'll tell you what, I purchased a microphone, a mixer interface, like a whole like studio setup because I used to rap back in the day. So I purchased all that stuff, purchased a motor scooter, and still had enough money to like just make money and save it up and you spend it on stuff. So it was really nice.
$40, $60. That's a pretty good, consistent start right there.
Right? It's more than I make with a podcast on a daily basis.
Hey. Yeah, no, it's just, like I said, starting with that foundation is just so important. I think a lot of people skip over that. They just want to dive. And by no means have I done any of these at like this super large scale, like I'm no millionaire. Right. But it doesn't matter what the scale is. I always say it could be a team of one, a team of two, but I want to operate it like it's 25.
Love that. Always.
So I think just having integrity in what you're doing, no matter what, if you're going to decide to do it, that should be what's in the forefront, and that should be how you set it up. So you may not know how to do it, but you can research it.
Yeah.
I never built a website before I built it. And I don't mean like coding. I'm no coder or anything like that. But designing, setting it up.
Right.
I'd never done that until I did it. I'd never, set up like a pricing structure. I'd never done an LLC until I did them. So it just takes time to research them. And that's what I call that foundation phase, where before I jump out there, I'm setting it all up. If that takes 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, then that's just what it is.
Right.
But
And
you're ready.
I love the idea of just like the foundation phase of it, kind of as you called it, because at the very, like some people get so stuck on like, oh, I got to make sure this thing is like exactly perfect and that thing is exactly perfect. But for you, you're just like, okay, well, I know I at least want a foundation and a base, and like, okay, so I'm going to work on a logo and I'm just going to learn that and do that. And then I'm going to work, like, you don't let trying to figure out every single piece stop you from starting on the first piece of it.
Yeah. I think people definitely, and even me, no matter what I've done, like there's always those moments where you're stuck on one thing. You're like, I can't figure this out, but it can't paralyze you or stop you. Now there's balance. You don't want to go on one end where you're just jumping in and you're not prepared. But then you don't want to be so stuck where you can't move forward because you're trying to get like every little thing. There's no such thing as perfection.
Absolutely.
So you need to get to a place where you can at least move forward and operate. But if you have that foundation, when those obstacles come, you're prepared to tackle them because you're here. And I think, you're always going to grow and you're going to evolve. But as much as possible, I tried to set myself up to where, like, example, pricing. You have to decide where you want to be. Like, if you're selling a product, there's a high, there's a middle, there's a low. Nothing's wrong with any one of those options. If you want to be at the high end, you can. There's a space for that. If you want to be at the low end, that's fine. There's plenty of companies that offer, lower price products and they're successful. You have to decide where you want to be. But I don't want to go and start where today, well, because I'm starting out, it's $1. And then in 3 months, now it's $2. And then in 6 months, it's $5. No, where do I want to be? I don't like that as a consumer. I don't want to get a product at 11, then boom, now we understand there are changes that will evolve. You do have to adjust your pricing based on external factors. But to just randomly jump, that doesn't make sense to me.
There's just that discontent of like, man, I was getting like, because even like with the idea of like, oh, I'm not grandfathered in from like how I was before. Come on now.
And it's also not fun to do on the back end either. Like, I don't want to have to deal with that. So where is it that I want to be? What space do I want to be in? And start there.